Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, and of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by cinematographer James Rhodes, whose work includes the feature film Femme, the Elton John's Farewell from Dodger Stadium, and Ray live at the Royal Albert Hall. Welcome to the show, James.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, thanks. I guess I want to start with Femme, and I'm wondering how, because it started as a short film.
Yeah.
So, from the short film, what changed in your approach to lighting for the feature?
Um, I mean, I keep describing the short as a firework, and it kind of is. Like it just kind of goes from A to B and just ratchets and ratchets in tension, and all the style is sort of over the top, and it's really fun and a little bit outside of reality. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of colorful and bold. And with the feature, we knew that we wouldn't be able to sustain that kind of atmosphere throughout because it would just, yeah, it would fall flat at some point. And it would, it kind of demanded a little bit more of an ebb and flow throughout the film. So the biggest departure was kind of stepping into kind of more realistic lighting environments and stepping away from those bold and vivid scenes to try and give them power every now and again, rather than it becomes a whitewash of that and then it has no power anymore. So yeah, that was probably the biggest difference.
I've been a camera person for 30 years and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
No, it has some like really interesting, particularly like the clubs or the various the saunas and what have you. It has some really interesting color choices in the lighting, and I'm wondering um, like how you guys came to that decision or how you came to sort of light it that way.
Yeah. Um, I suppose it was kind of like a bit of like a let's see if this works, and if it did, then we carried on with it. But that sort of started on the short, and so there were some of those that carried on from the short. Like I always really liked, usually I'd quite like to kind of have like a fill light have like like a coolness so that it, if you play it at a low level and it's a little bit cool to the key, it kind of plays as like a cool shadow. And so I guess I just turned that to 11 and went full saturation blue as like an uplight for highlights and things in the short. Sort of riffing on the idea that the drug dealer had a really obnoxious car stereo system that kicked out a load of blue light, and so on the feature I sort of ran with that a bit more, and that became, yeah, kind of a calling card for lighting Nathan, really like Jules, but we sort of used it here and there on other characters as well. um but yeah, that was kind of the blue thing, I guess. And then the purple thing came more from wardrobe, like Nathan's hero wardrobe. For the very first time we see Jules performing as Aphrodite, was this glorious kind of purple satin um, dress. And yeah, when I saw that in prep, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to see if I can build purple into some of the environments to, you know, marry with that a little bit, including the performance where you see that dress, but also in the bedroom and other places. And then, yeah, I don't know. We sort of always wanted to keep away from red, so red doesn't play very much. But red became, because we kept away from it so much, it became like an obvious one to use for the masculine club,
Mhm.
which. there was a lighting rig in that club, and when we recce'd it, we thought, oh, this is actually, we were working on a budget, and we thought, oh, this actually kind of works for us. Like we'll hack into it and reprogram stuff, but we'll kind of embrace what's already here. And the lasers in there worked really well to kind of bring that red world into it, contrasted with the blue. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, all those things, like we just, I don't know, pulled references early doors and sort of, it's kind of like choosing any creative decision. Like you sort of see what sticks, and if everyone kind of resonates at the same time, it must be right. So.
I'm wondering, because we sort of mentioned it, like in the short, it ratchets it up the tension really fast, but in the feature, you need to ebb and flow a bit. But I'm wondering, because when you talk to an editor, they talk about working with the tone and everything, but a lot of that's set up on set through the cinematography and what have you. So what were some of the techniques that you chose, or how did you use the lighting to sort of help ratchet up the tension and build a particular tone for the series or the film?
I don't know. I suppose color was like, I mean, again, from the short, like color was like, let's say that color means sort of vulnerability or danger. And so in the short, there's never a scene that exists in a non-colorful world. Obviously in the feature, there are scenes where they're not vulnerable scenes, they're like powerful scenes, but they because of their environment demanded rich saturation. So those rules don't really fully apply in the feature, but we definitely hung on to a little bit of that. Like, where do we go with the color to make the audience feel a certain anxiety or whatever? So like, the sauna was very sort of tranquil with that kind of rich blue, whereas like the masculine club was red and aggressive and totally different feeling, and like strobing and doing all the things. So yeah, trying to sort of riff with what the scene demanded, but meanwhile obviously kind of sticking to what those environments sort of want to be. It's a bit of a mix of just freestyling with what you think it should be, and then kind of ratcheting it up if you can to kind of get a bit more out of it. And then using kind of things like highlights to cut through, so you sort of still connect with the character if there isn't a natural key light, like stuff like that.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
What was your approach to work with the colorist on this film?
It was great. It was a dream, really. My really good friend Joseph colored it, and we worked together for years, and he worked on the short as well. So he was kind of, one of my non-negotiables, if I can use that. I don't think I quite had that much power, but I sort of said, guys, we really need Joseph. If you think you need me, I think we need him. And thankfully the directors really agreed. And so that, it was a bit of a push and pull with production just because of cost, because he's New York based and, working across time zones and things and different, company 3 being, a massive company. It was tricky to get it through, but once we did, Joseph was phenomenal. Like I wanted to do, something that felt like it existed in the world of the short film. So we knew where we were starting. But we are, like we've discussed, we had different environments, different, natural skin tones, as well as all the sort of high saturation stuff. And so I went into Panavision, and while I was doing all my lens testing, I also threw up a load of, different colors that I thought I was going to use. Got all those full fat files sent over to New York, so Joseph could basically build the lookup table for the project, which version 1 is what we shot with. It was kind of, he smashed it first time. I guess in a way it was version 2, because I'm sure he built it off of where we started with the short film. But was a different camera, a different color science. So it was a bit of a reimagination of that. But yeah, I just love it. It was, and then yeah, in terms of post color, like it was just finessing really. Like we worked remotely. That was part of the deal, was like, we can't really afford Joseph, but company 3 are suggesting if you guys kind of do everything remotely, then maybe we can get it over the line. And so that became, doing remote sessions after we'd already reviewed it in a theatre suite in London, so that we could kind of nitpick a few little things. And then Joseph would usually go off, spend 2 or 3 days or maybe a week or something, and just chip away at all of that. And then we would get a new thing to review, and we'd go back into Company 3 London and review on the theatre suite again. And so we did it as a bit of a slower process than what would usually be done, like where it would be just a week of hitting it hard, or 2 weeks or whatever. But in a way that was great, because it meant that Joseph could maybe apply a little bit more time to it than he probably could have afforded to do if it was on, paid by the hour company time kind of thing. It was a bit more of a favor, and so chipping away here and there between bigger jobs. But I guess that gave us all breathing space to mull over what we were coming up with and how it was going. So yeah, it was great.
I do have a couple of questions about your concert films, because I watched like the Ray at Royal Albert Hall, and the Elton John at Dodgers Stadium, and I'm interested in, like, for example, at Royal Albert Hall, that's a very old building. They weren't planning on having cameras and rigs and everything set up for shooting. So how did you guys, set everything up for lighting in that scenario, and let alone adding lots of cameras to get the look?
I mean, it is, even though it's an old building, it is a very, busy, current, functioning concert space. So the way it goes with those attended concerts, I think the Adele show I did is the only exception, but the attended concerts where there's a big audience, usually it's a show that exists before we get on board, or maybe it's the same time. It's kind of like, we're going to create a show that we're going to film, but it's still a show. And so the artist will have their lighting designers, they'll have their sort of tour crew and all that stuff. And so I kind of come in with the director, and its first thing is figuring out how we can affect the existing environment that is traveling with the show, to try and fulfill our own ambitions with the images that we want to create. So yeah, I mean, the Royal Albert Hall show, I had a few conversations with the lighting designer ahead of the show, and saw some previs stuff, and had a bit of time to raise some questions and talk about some options that give ourselves a few get out jails if she wasn't taking the light that well, or if we needed something else to change to fix something. But in general, it's kind of a bit of turn up, and it is what it is. On a show like that, I didn't have a whole lot of time to reinvent the wheel.
Well, it's impressive, because I've never been to Royal Albert Hall, but it felt very much intimate in the way you guys shot it and lit it. So it felt very it didn't feel like a massive space. It felt more like I was in a smaller club that just had a big stage or something like that, and that was really impressive to me.
Yeah, I think something that Femme carries as well is that the use of eye light. And when we were in that space with Ray, in the rehearsals, and also during like the first 2 or 3 songs, I'm sat with the lighting designer, and I'm sort of seeing all the cameras on a switcher, and I'm kind of getting a feel for how things are going. And so I can go, oh, that thing's working really well, do more of that. Or, can we, so I have a few options up my sleeve to kind of almost override the programming of the show to add beauty or add connection or whatever. So I was thinking highlight is like a perfect tool for getting into the sort of atmosphere of and the intimacy with an artist. So I carried an highlight on camera for Femme throughout, and I just would have this little twinkle for Jules. And for Preston, before he's a co-protagonist, I would leave that out and introduce that as we're supposed to care for him. And with Ray, we had this bar of light along the front edge of the stage, which as soon as I realized how well that was working, I was like, yeah, give me more of that, give me more of that. So there's some incredible close-ups where you just get this sort of like, you know, lift in the eyes, and I mean, how can you not sort of well up in tears when you watch her perform anyway, but let alone, you know, when you kind of help her access the audience in that way, with an highlight, is kind of incredible. You know, you see her well up at the same time because of that.
So you got to sort of sit at the switch. Are you able to, because I think about the switchboards that I've seen, and usually like they're like cut to camera 1, cut to camera 2, they're sort of live to tape. But I'm wondering, like, are you able to adjust lighting as you're going? Because hers, it got in some cases pretty like unique lighting that sort of shifted and changed as she was going.
Yeah, it's kind of like the design of the show is pretty done. Like, it's, you know, all the stuff that's time coded to the music is pretty nailed in by that point. But if you feel like, oh, this is not working, she's getting lost a bit because the background's too dark or something, then you can, like I said, have a few get out of jails, which are, usually a few extra lamps that are not really doing any job roles. So you can go, okay, bring that one round and make it her backlight now, or or she sits at the piano and she's not really got the key light's not working in her eyes anymore, and so that backlight can become her new key, and and quickly dial that in, and then raise the level really slowly so the audience don't notice you've done it, kind of thing. And if there are a few clunky mistakes in there, then the audience don't mind because they're still listening to the music, and then for the edit, you just cut around it a little bit and hide those imperfections.
It sounds pretty stressful.
Kind of fun, like,
yeah.
I'm sort of separate from the truck in most of these situations, where I'm kind of more in the room with the lighting designer and looking at it with my eyes, but also I have my own switchboard that isn't interfering with the recording or anything, and I just have all the cameras, so I can just toggle. I kind of just hit every button every second, so I'm just constantly getting like flash frames of every camera, and then I'm just seeing things that stand out to me in that 1 second of that frame, and then I'm like, wait a minute, something was going on there, and I go back and then I can radio like the camera, like, oh, can you just go a bit wider, that feels a bit too much, or can whatever. So yeah, I mean, the director's talking to everyone all the time, so I tried to keep pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I just talked to the lighting designer to finesse the lighting, mostly.
Now, you've worked on some amazing concerts. Is there one that sort of sticks out for you?
Yeah, the Adele at Griffith Observatory was, I knew at the time, I was like, this is never happening again. I was like, I shouldn't be here. My CV's nowhere near big enough, but me and the director have been working together and we've been doing good work, so no one's questioned me. And then we were doing it, and it all went really well, and we were like, wow, that was amazing. And the show turned out incredible. But yeah, it was just one of those really special ones, because that was one of the ones where it was not an existing show before it was a film. It was like, we're making a return show for Adele, and it's going to be exterior, daylight into sunset into night, and it's going to be it's going to be a set build by Ez Devlin, and it's going to whatever be a CBS TV special, and it was so special. A-list audience, crazy.
I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure show or TV show or movie?
Guilty pleasure. I had time to think about this one as well, and I still don't know. I mean, it's non-filmic, but I think a lot of people would probably say it, so maybe it's not such a guilty one, but it's almost like anti-filmic in a way. Is a UK show called Peep Show, which is just everything's POV, everything's down the barrel, and it was done at a time with a certain budget that not a lot of resources were given to the set build or the lighting or anything, but the comedy's there and it makes me laugh. So,
well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Thanks so much.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course on Instagram at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.